On this episode of Just Informed Talk, we're going to review the latest set of Q posts as we have more context on the cryptic tweets between a New York Times writer and Q, it would seem. Plus, we're going to look at Comey's FBI, and there's been a new release of documents about MK Ultra that we're going to review that have some crazy information. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg misses her first day of hearings in 25 years, and Q called it. We're going to discuss that as well. Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome to Just Informed Talk. I always begin by saying thank you. If you guys haven't hit that subscribe button, please come here on the landing page, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications so you're notified when these videos get posted. So this is where we're picking up. We're going to pick up today, January 6th or 7th, I should say, and this is Q Post 2660, and we're going to be starting here at Q Post 2661. Now, I always start by saying also, if you guys haven't if you guys want to get caught up with the latest Q posts and you haven't yet, come here, watch these last few videos. They're going to get you caught up to where we're at. And if you're scratching your head going, what is QAnon and what is this guy talking about? Please come here and watch this video. It's What is QAnon and the Great Awakening? It's a great video that tells you all about QAnon and the Great Awakening, what it basically is, how to find the information, how to do the research, all of that stuff. So that's for you to go check out. Now, here we go. We're going to start right here with these tweets. And who are these tweets from? These are Maggie Haberman. Who is Maggie Haberman? She is the reporter formerly of Politico, now with the New York Times, who actually was mentioned in the Podesta emails as being a basically a favorable helper. She would tee up stories, in the words of the email on the Podesta emails. It says that Maggie Haberman was a trustworthy source who was good at teeing up sources or teeing up stories for them. So that's where we're at, and now there's been this back and forth. I guess in order to really pick up here, we'll just pick up with this post because that's where we left off the last one without much context to what was going on there. Now, the last one is this tweet where Maggie Haberman says, "There is no smoking on this train. If you're found smoking, we'll assume you're on fire and take the appropriate action," says the Amtrak conductor. Now, what is this referencing? Well, in order to understand that, you're going to have to go and we'll read these tweets to give us context for that one. But the handler is the conductor here, and it says, "Smoking can be bad for your health. Read the warning label to board train and walk away. Once in the tunnel, there is no going back. Q." So what I think this is referring to is the Q train, because we're going to see in these next few tweets how it was basically framed by Maggie Haberman in her tweets that President Trump is Q. So we'll look at that. Actually, we'll just go right into that, and then we'll read all of this together, and it'll all make some sense. Some sense. First of all, this is the first tweet. Now, this is from June of 2018, so this is a while back, and it says, "People in the White House sound as confused as everyone else about what happens after the president's executive order, when McGahn was against him signing. Or which McGahn was against him signing. There's interagency disagreement about what it means. Trump now essentially tunes his chief of staff out, Trump driving the train." So the reference there is obviously that President Trump's driving the train. Well, what train is that? Here you see in the very next tweet, but this is from November 20th, where Maggie basically says, "Oh, on the Q train intercom, Q train. Attention passengers, the intercom phone is for emergencies only. It is not for asking the conductor questions." Right? Okay, so those are the first two that Q gives us. And then Q gives us this phrase, or this right here that says, "A stone sits idle while the world around it evolves. Evolution, depending on the stage, can be deadly." And then we get this tweet right here, where obviously this is the one that we just saw from yesterday, where it says, "There's no smoking on this train. If you're found smoking, we'll assume you're on fire and take the appropriate action," says the Amtrak conductor. What in the world is going on here? I'm so lost in these secret code message talking, but I'm going to try. I've read a lot, so I have a good idea of what it's probably referring to. But it says, "We can talk through code or we can act through transparency. The choice is yours. However, the clock is ticking. And at a select point in time, that option will be expired. Regular service appointments should be made in order to maintain functionality. Q." So let's just start here. The first tweet here from Maggie Haberman about this quote about "there's no smoking on this train. If you're found smoking, we'll assume you're on fire and take appropriate action." I'm not 100% on these meanings yet. I've done a little bit of research, looked around, read some stuff, but there's no clear cut answers other than what you can probably glean off of what's being insinuated around this. I read it as this, that Maggie Haberman, the connection was made. This post right here is back to the Q post where he quotes the Podesta email where they talk about Maggie Haberman. And of course, then she makes that comment. And now, almost as if that she has some way of trying to stop Q, it would seem, maybe. And that she was trying to relay that message to Q. And Q is basically saying, kind of throwing it back, saying smoking can be bad for your health. Read the warning label. Kind of saying like you've been warned about whatever. I mean, fake news, whatever you want to call it. It says deboard, train, and walk away. Once in the tunnel, there's no going back. So basically, maybe get off the Q train and walk away, and just you don't want to get involved with this because once you start, then there's no going back. That's the way I read it. And then I guess the next post here is kind of like contextualizing it for us, saying like showing us back in June where she said that President Trump is driving the train. And then of course here in November calling out the Q train basically. So then you kind of read these and it says a stone sits idle while the world around it evolves. Evolution, depending on the stage, can be deadly. Again, another veiled warning. I don't know. It's something about like not. Basically, it's saying don't try to get involved. I don't know. I mean, this is the best way I'm reading it. I don't really know what's being said here. So if you guys have any other thoughts, leave them down in the comments. And of course, referencing back to this same tweet that we just looked at, it says, saying that we can talk through code or we can act through transparency, I guess means that they can have these coded Twitter messages, veiled threats or whatever, warnings, or they could actually just act through transparency and do what is right. But there's obviously a time on this. There's a clock that's running on this, and there will come a point in time where there will be no going back, and you can't save your own self. And I think the service appointments means basically like the Maggie needs to go and, cooperate with the investigation. Go find the investigators and cooperate and tell them what she knows about everything. Because obviously they're all playing a dangerous game. We're all playing a dangerous game, aren't we? The game of life. It's got its twists and turns. But let's be more specific. I've seen too much, read too much, heard too much about people who get involved with the Clintons and the Podestas. And, I'm not making any suggestions other than say people do have a tendency to just disappear right before they're about to do something that would negatively affect certain individuals. But I'll leave it at that. I'll let your imagination do with it the rest as it may. So that's kind of what that is. I guess we just go over that real quick. Now, the next one here gives this Fox News article, which is by Joe diGenova, which talks about Cardinal James Comey. It's kind of a funny piece. The way it's written is basically meant to show what James Comey really is. And I'm going to read it because it's actually a good read, and I'll just share it with you guys real quick. Wyatt Earp, Elliot Ness, J. Edgar Hoover, Inspector Clouseau, James Comey. The names reflect a continuum of greatness to farce and mediocrity. In the annals of U.S. law enforcement, no individual has reached the depths of disgrace as James Cardinal Comey. I guess Cardinal is the name Joe diGenova gives him, a little nickname. The Cardinal was a sobriquet FBI agents used to denigrate their leader. As Deputy Attorney General, he was called Drama Queen. Known for his pomposity and self-regard, Comey cut a swath of arrogance unknown in either of those illustrious organizations. He was the cult of personality. He surrounded himself with sycophants, people dedicated to his promotion and their advancement. The Bureau and the public became the losers. James Comey politicized the FBI, America's premier law enforcement agency. It started on July 6, 2016, when he usurped the authority of Attorney General Loretta Lynch in violation of the Constitution, law, and DOJ regulations. He destroyed Hillary's campaign when he unethically and unprofessionally described her conduct with pejorative words such as criminal, quote unquote, and then illegally exonerated her of the crimes. President Obama should have fired him that day, but he did not. Why? Perhaps because he had knowledge of Hillary's avoidance of any protected email channels because he communicated with her on her private server using a pseudonym. Comey is a poser. He pretends to be Thomas Becket, but he is, in fact, the assassin Henry II. He claims in his memos he doesn't do sneaky things, leak, or do weaselly things, yet in his interview with Fox News, Bret Baier, he pretended not to know what a leak is. The president performed a public service by firing him. He should have done it the day after his inauguration. The treachery revealed by Comey, Clapper, and Brennan requires accountability. That can only happen through a federal grand jury investigation headed by John W. Huber, the U.S. Attorney General in Utah, or U.S. Attorney in Utah, who has been appointed to investigate the FISA criminality by the Obama FBI and DOJ. The evidence of illegal and unconstitutional abuse of law enforcement and intelligence community power and authority is clear. Grand jury subpoenas need to be issued. These individuals have stolen more than 15 months of a new president's tenure. They have thrown the country needlessly into spasms of doubt about the bona fides of an election. Cardinal Comey should get the first grand jury subpoena. And that's by Joe Genova, a former U.S. attorney from the District of Columbia. So, look, take with that from you may. It's definitely an opinion piece, but it's an opinion that's worth looking at. And Q wants us to note from that one paragraph there where it said, the treachery revealed by Comey, Clapper, and Brennan requires accountability. That can only happen through a federal grand jury investigation headed by John W. Huber, the U.S. attorney in Utah, who had been appointed to investigate the FISA criminality by the Obama FBI and DOJ. And of course, there you go. I mean, think about what this is saying. It's telling us that John Huber and his office from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Utah is involved in these investigations. And don't forget what's important. What's very important is that he was an appointment from Obama. So there's no way you can turn this around and say, oh, yeah, it's President Trump. He appointed his own minion to go do. No. This is a man who was already an appointed individual representing different offices under the Obama administration. And so that you can throw that out the window. But this is going on. So there you go. And of course, here's the next one. Now, this is the one that gets into the crazy mind control stuff. So we're going to read this briefly, but first off, there's this article. This is out of The Sun, and it basically talks about how there have been new official documents that have been released that suggest all types of crazy stuff. So, I'll leave a link to this story if you guys want to read through it, because there's a lot of information to take away from this. Basically, this guy right here was involved in some FOIA, Freedom of Information requests that he ended up finally getting. And there is so much here. I'll give you a little excerpt here. It says, are the CIA still trying to cover up projects that took place in the 50s and 60s? In my opinion, yes. And this is what John, the owner of Black Vault, says, the guy who got this information. It says, quote, they are trying to cover it up, and that is evidenced not just by what I went through to get the documents, but the documents themselves. So you'll see through these records, they were doing a lot of different types of research with drugs on cats and dogs and other animals. They were implanting electronic devices into animals to see whether electronic impulses can essentially control the brain. Now think about this, guys. That's what we're talking about here. And this is from the 50s and 60s. If you don't think in the last 70 plus years, they have perfected new crazy technologies that we can't even fathom or understand, there's flicker rates in TVs there's subliminal messaging, there's tonal frequencies, there's colors and the associations and different, mind manipulation, behavior modification techniques, and then so much more using radio frequencies, using all types of different devices and tools and things, implementations that can induce a comatose state, can induce a state. They can induce happiness. They can induce sadness. They could induce a manic state. They could do a lot, I believe. I'm not sure that I don't have any evidence necessarily to pull out right here and show you, but I can tell you that just speculatively speaking, if you're talking about this is what they were doing back in the 50s and 60s, I can't fathom what they're doing today. And it also is really sad. I don't like that they were testing it on cats and dogs. I think that's pretty messed up too. But that's, what else, what are you going to do? Anyway, you guys can read through that. I'll leave a link to that. It's a really good read. But here it says, program developed ongoing under offshore, not domestic tangent agency. Covert funding, animals, humans 1988, 71% average success rate, targeted mental criteria designated as mental institutions and therapists, program specialists, cocktail regimen, 4 times daily brain intercept, administered by Hint, and then it gives this article. So now I'm not a scientist or like a medical brain scientist, so I'll tell you right now, this is crazy. I read through it. It just talks about how you can convert brain signals into action, meaning that they can create actions based off of your brain signals. So they have a very deep understanding of how the brain works, even though it's probably one of the least fully understood things around. They have a great idea of how it works and how each center will coordinate to different parts of your body. But think about it, guys. Like I said, if they were doing this stuff like we see here in the 50s and 60s and experimenting in animals and who knows what else, where do you think it's got to today? That's the only question I'll ask you guys to think about. And I'll leave a link to this for anybody who wants to get into the more nitty gritty with the details, the medical, actual scientific details of this process. I'll leave this link to all of these articles down in the description after this video. So then it says, wounded in action military personnel, targets of the program, PTSD plus, clandestine black ops, zero affiliation, non-stick, something out of a movie, fiction, the hole is deep, Q. So yes, of course. Look at this. Look at what's being said here. First, we get this article about new documents that have come out where they discuss how they used animals in these testing, where they put chips in their head and did all types of other crazy stuff. And this is back in the 50s and 60s, right? And it's offshore and not domestic, meaning this is put under some other program in some clandestine, special access, compartmentalized program that is out of the purview of probably most people in the Senate, or in the Congress, and most people in the judiciary, and most people in the executive branch. So that's terrifying. That means that there is organizations inside of our country who are offshore and not domestically there's no domestic oversight, and they're doing allegedly crazy mind control experiments, right, with covert funding, where they're testing animals and humans, right? Not to mention the fact that there's the whole, like what Alex Jones would say, all the human animal chimera stuff, right? If you think that they just were experimenting with animals and their mind control and how to tweak the brains, I'm sorry, but if you don't think they were doing DNA sequence manipulating and genome manipulating, then I think that that's kind of a naive opinion. But that's just me. It's an opinion. I don't know. I'll give you my best informed opinion. Terrifying, again, is that they have a 71% average success rate of controlling humans' minds since 1988. I'm assuming that's what that means. And that there's a mental criteria that's been designated. And it's got this comma here. I'm not sure what this is exactly referring to. So if you guys have an idea about this space here, what's the criteria we've talked about in the past, I guess, people who have, what Q's alluded to in the past and basically made insinuations about is that when people go, and if somebody were to select somebody for mind control, they would look at somebody who has a previous set of mental illnesses. People are more susceptible to believing whatever delusion they're trying to create in their mind, or illusion. So that, I think, is what that's referring to. And of course, Q said in the past that the therapists are somebody that need to be looked at in these cases, and especially from the mental institutions. And it's saying they're basically called, I guess, program specialists, and that they give them medicine drugs to basically intercept their brain. I don't know, to intercept the patterns of their brain. It's crazy. I mean, this is insanity. I don't even know what to say about this other than what's going on. And then this article, of course, like I said, I mean, if this is what they're doing now, and we're seeing those documents from the 50s and 60s where they're basically doing the same kind of experimentation, don't you think that, like, in some clandestine covert bunker somewhere, there's technology that would make our minds explode, if we because we couldn't wrap our heads around it, right? So that, to me, is what it's saying. And then this is a really sick part, is that they're taking military personnel, it would seem, who were wounded in action with PTSD and more, and making them the targets of this clandestine black operation. This is, I mean, it's sickening to me. This is something out of a movie. Yeah, this is sounds like the Bourne movies, Jason Bourne. Sounds like that. Is it fiction? And the rabbit hole does go deep. So this is what, I mean, this is Q. This is just what Q's saying. I'm just telling you guys what it's being said here. So you guys, you leave it to your own, logical thinking and critical thinking to decide whether that's got any validity or not. So anyway, that's a sad story. But now the next one is a shout out from President Trump, right? Gotta love that. On the Twitter, you can see over here, he starts with these tweets saying, with all the success that our country is having, including the just released jobs numbers, which are off the charts, the fake news and totally dishonest media concerning me and my presidency has never been worse. Many have become crazed lunatics, which is true, who have given up on the truth. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more, Mr. President. Now, in the very next tweet of this thread, President Trump again says fake news. And you'll see in this last one, he says fake news again, which is a shout out to the Q boards, but we'll get to that in a second. It says, the fake news will knowingly lie and demean in order to make the tremendous success of the Trump administration and me look as bad as possible. They use non-existent sources and write stories that are total fiction. Our country is doing so well, yet this is a sad day in America. I can't agree more. It's so saddening and disheartening when I turn on even Fox or some of these other news, but then see the clips from CNN and MSNBC, and they're talking about how it's all doom and gloom. It's all the sky is falling. It's all impeachment and trouble and how President Trump's ruining our country, when the facts don't co-align with that narrative. As a matter of fact, they diverge quite widely from that, because there is no facts behind what they're saying. And again, here in the last one, President Trump says, the fake news media in our country is the real opposition party. It is the true enemy of the people. We must bring honesty back to journalism and reporting. And Mr. President, I'm doing my best here. I know there's so many other great people here who are doing their best to try to bring objective truth and to be very clear when they're giving their opinion. That's what I do. I mean, and I can only really speak for myself in saying that when I do these reports and I talk about the news, I talk about issues, I do my best to make it very clear. Here's an objective fact. Here are objective facts. Here is speculation. Here is opinion. And I label those very clearly so that people watching understand that and don't get misled by my words. But the media doesn't do that. The mainstream media, fake news, whatever you want to call them, the fake news media, they don't do that. They get on TV and they use the different word opinions, mix them with facts, mix them with conjecture and speculation, and they wrap that into one package, and they present it to you as a part of their narrative that they want to control, that they want to implant, that they want to have you follow without question, mind you. You're not supposed. There's a reason why when you turn on Fox News, there's no comment section. You can't comment through your TV, right? You're not going to be able to do it. They're telling you what to think. See, that's why I like being on a platform like YouTube. I love it because there's this interactivity. There's you guys out there who can come and say, oh, you got this wrong, get this right. You didn't see this. You didn't see that. Let's let's bring up this issue. We haven't talked about this. This is happening. And it just makes the information so much more reliable, in my opinion, because not only do you have what I said, but then you have thousands of people in the comments who are telling their take on what's being said. And then you can take all of those and say, okay, well, I can formulate different thoughts based on multiple opinions instead of just looking at one singular source. But anyway, that's enough for my rant on that. But what Q wants us to look at is right here. This quote. And it's the literal tweet that we just read. But it says, compare and contrast, ring a bell, think drop yesterday, new narrative created, refusal to provide coverage of successes. Why is this important? Sometimes making a connection leads to uncovering. Q. I wonder. There's the connection. The connection is in this next next post we're going to look at, where an anon connects them. Now, instead of putting all three of President Trump's tweets here, the anon just puts, I think it's the first two, and then connects it to this Q post that we got yesterday, which was talking about basically what was going to happen. All of these different narratives that were presented by the media. First, you had North Korea, how President Trump was going to bring us into war, and then when he brought peace, they stopped talking about it. They changed the narrative. And then, of course, you have the next one where it was President Trump's going to collapse the stock market. Well, then when President Trump creates the largest gains on record, they stop talking about it and change the narrative. And then, of course, you have the one where this one was one of the best, where there was going to be a complete economic collapse, right? But then when that didn't happen and we have lowest unemployment, of course, they had to change the narrative. And that's what it's referring to. That's what the problem with the mainstream media is, especially what President Trump deems the fake news media, is that they're reporting. It's not even that they're not reporting on it. They're reporting on things and issues, but then when they're proven wrong, it's, oh, we can't talk about that. We have to just switch the narrative and never speak of it again. Until something develops in that story that helps push the narrative that we want to get out there, which is that President Trump's a bad guy who's running the country into the ground. When anything happens bad, then we'll go back to that story and we'll look at it. But until then, we're not going to touch it because it would make President Trump look good, which I don't care if it makes President Trump look good or bad. How about it makes our country look good? How about that for a consideration when you're deciding what news story to run? Anyway. Q says, the anon says, read the pics related together. So mirror-y. I don't think that's a word. That might be a word. I don't know. I don't think it is, though. It says A for you, Q. Or AU for Q. And then it says, the reason why we are here, however, this is incomplete, missing the third tweet. Yeah, okay. So there's basically just another wink and a nod to the anon community about what's actually going on now. This is the craziest story here. We're going to take a minute to talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So, of course, you guys remember in yesterday's video, the one that we just put up, that you guys should definitely go watch if you haven't already, and all of these. This video, actually, we talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Why? Because Q talks about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Why is Q talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg? Well, it's quite apparent now why, as today, if you do a little Bing search, you can see that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's missed her first oral arguments in the Supreme Court in 25 years of being a Supreme Court justice. Now, that doesn't bode well for her, I don't believe. Now, what the basic reason for it is that she had these lung cancer nodules removed, and Q gave us this post. This was the post from yesterday's video where we talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it talks about, why was she selected, and it goes through her history of the different things that she has promoted, including stuff here like having the age of consent be 12 years old for sexual acts, which is disgusting and disturbing, among other things, changing the whole, taking pronouns out of, anything because they're offensive. It's just a bunch of crazy stuff, making prostitution legal, like that kind of stuff, right? And it asks us who appointed her, and that was Bill Clinton, of course, so that makes a lot of sense. And looking at her history, that makes a whole lot of sense. Now, the one thing that we didn't get fully covered here, and I had one of my sources person who helps out and has a really, really good instinct for this stuff, told me basically about who the doctor is. Now, I haven't been able to confirm that this is her doctor, but there's a lot to look at here. Now, this is a doctor from the Sloan Kettering Memorial Cancer Center, right? And this guy is named Sir Murray F. Brennan. Now, I'm not sure if he has any relation to John Brennan, although they both look kind of raisin-faced, turd muffiny. I'm joking, obviously. Ha 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 ha. Anyway, this guy's the senior vice president of international programs, and he's the surgeon at the Sloan Kettering Institute or Cancer Center. So this guy's got a pretty crazy story, and it stands to reason that he might be the one who has been treating Ruth Bader Ginsburg, especially in her last visit. Now, who is this guy? Well, he's a oncologic surgeon, scientist. He's got all this incredibly long resume of things that he's done, and he's from New Zealand, and he's a Knight Grand Companion, whatever that is, right? And this is him with his little, outfit. And so anyway, this guy, just looking at him, on the outside, there's nothing that is too crazy, except for when you look at this story. If you guys ever heard of this movie called Obsessed, I think it was even made into like a major motion picture at some point. But this is actually that guy's life. This guy, Dr. Murray Brennan. It's based on this factual case where this woman was like obsessed with him, right? And then it talks about how that's based on true story. So I just thought I'd throw that out there into the community and let you guys look at that, because that is the what I've heard from my sources is, or possibly the doctor for, or who is treating Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So anyway, now two things. First of all, it's post 2666, which we all know that's the evil number, right? That's my opinion. And it says, imagine that, what a coincidence is. It's got the what a coincidence Q, and it's got the Bing search for Ginsburg, which is showing that she's missing court. Now, and the next one here basically is Q just giving us this article from the Associated Press, and we'll read it real quick, which talks about Ginsburg missing the Supreme Court arguments for the first time. So the Supreme Court says Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is missing arguments for the first time in more than 25 years as she recuperates from cancer surgery last month. Court spokeswoman Kathy Ardberg said Monday the 85-year-old Ginsburg is continuing to recuperate and work from home after doctors removed two cancerous growths from her lung. It says Ginsburg was discharged from a New York hospital on Christmas Day, and she had two early cancer surgeries. So that's the story, though. And I mean, this was alluded to by Q. I mean, you saw the post talking about RBG yesterday, and all of a sudden now she's not going to be there for the arguments, Supreme Court arguments, for the first time, and that's a big deal. And Q and the Anon says morning Q, and Q says first time in more than 25 years, morning Patriot. So what does this mean, guys? It means that there's a very good possibility that in the near future we will have another Supreme Court justice that will be being nominated if she does have to step down, but we'll have to wait and see how that all unfolds, which means that there will be a panic in DC. So you guys can look forward to seeing that, and we'll keep you updated. Now, that's pretty much going to wrap things up. If you guys want to stick around for 1 second, the best way you can help the channel, if you want to help out, is to come here on the landing page, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications. That helps the channel out more than you guys can ever know. Also, watch these videos, share them on your social media, and also make sure you leave your thoughts, theories, and insights down in the comments, because I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. I always enjoy hearing your thoughts. So I really appreciate you guys going down and leaving comments and letting me know what you think. Another couple ways you could help out. One is to come over here to Patreon. It's a crowdfunding website that helps support this channel. You go to Patreon, patreon.com, and you search Just Informed Talk, or you click the link in the description of this video, and you can become a monthly monthly patron. You can give a monthly donation. It's literally, you can give as little as $1 or as much as you want. You set it and forget it, and know that by supporting me on Patreon, you're helping me in the face of YouTube demonetization, which is very real. And I try not to spend too much time talking about it. I try to just focus on working for you guys. So if you guys can, I really appreciate your support over here on Patreon. Also, another way, if you're not interested in doing the monthly donation, I set up a GoFundMe page. I'll leave links to both in the description. If you guys feel that you want to help out the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Now, another couple ways you can help out. come check out justinformednews.com. It's the official website for Just Informed Talk. You get all these cool stories from me, all the videos and stuff. You get these live news feeds. You have links to all the QAnon stuff that you'll basically need to get started. And you have links to all of the actual real news, which I say real news. I just mean, I'm not saying everything 100% of what they do is real and not whatever, but it's a good starting point if you guys want to get started and find some interesting news stories. That's where I always tell people to go. And another way you can help, obviously, is to come over here and find me on Twitter at Justin_formed, or just search Just Informed Talk. Come here, click the follow button, and you can follow me on Twitter, and you can get all my cool, clever, funny, great tweets. Okay. So that being said, we're going to do what I love, which is my favorite part of this show. It's God's Grace is Greater. It's a segment at the end of the show where we talk about God's grace and how it's truly greater, because I know we talk about so much negativity that it's incumbent upon me as a Christian, as an evangelist who wants to share the word of God, to tell you guys about God's good message at the end of every episode, because I'm like a kid at Christmas. I always save the best present for last. So with that, let's jump right into it. We're going to read some scripture out of the book of Titus, right? And this is out of chapter 3, verses 4 through 8. And I want to share these words with you because they talk about the importance of good works. And I really want to share this with you. It says, "But when the goodness and love for man appeared from God our Savior, he saved us, not by works of righteousness that we had done, but according to his mercy, through the washing of regeneration and renewal by the Holy Spirit. This Spirit he poured out on us abundantly through Jesus Christ our Savior, so that having been justified by his grace, we may become heirs with the hope of eternal life. This saying is trustworthy. I want you to insist on these things, so that those who have believed God might be careful to devote themselves to good works. These are good and profitable for everyone." And I couldn't agree more. That's something you should take out into the world and understand that the sacrifice that was made for us so that we may have eternal salvation, that sacrifice it's incumbent upon us to put that back into the world, to know the importance of doing good deeds and doing good works. You can start very simply. You can go find a shelter in your community and help the homeless. Find a soup kitchen and help feed them. Find a charity and donate. Whether it's your time or money or whatever you can do, go do it. And put good works into the world, because that's how you earn the true love of God. God loves us no matter what, right? Because we are his imperfect children. But good works and good deeds are important for us to do, because that's what God calls us to do. So I'm going to leave it there. I want to say thank you all for joining me here. Don't forget, now's a great time to do it. If you haven't already, come here, click the big red subscribe button. That's going to be it for me. I want to say thank you for watching Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.